There is grandeur in this view of life.
Welcome to Evolution Talk with Rick Coast, an introduction to the oldest story ever told.
In one of the show's earlier episodes, we looked at the proof of a creator put forth by the apologist William Paley. In 1802, Paley wrote a book called Natural Theology or Evidence of the Existence and Attributes of a Deity. Now that's quite a mouthful. It was in this book that the watchmaker analogy was born.
In crossing a heath, suppose I pitched my foot against a stone and were asked how the stone came to be there. I might possibly answer that, for anything I knew to the contrary, it had lain there forever. Nor would it perhaps be very easy to shew the absurdity of this answer. Suppose I had found a watch upon the ground, and it should be inquired how the watch happened to be in that place. I should hardly think of the answer which I had before given, that, for anything I knew, the watch might have always been there. There cannot be design without a designer.
It was this very thing which troubled Charles Darwin. His theory had no need for a creator. It wasn't that he wanted to do away with God, he just saw natural selection as being the force behind it all. It explained everything. Or did it? Even Darwin couldn't see the way to all of the steps in how an organism was shaped and formed. He could still comfortably nod his head and say that natural selection was the blind process behind it. And right there is the key word, blind. Natural selection may be blind, but we're not. Disabilities aside, we have the ability to see the world around us, as do many of the creatures we share this world with. Even Darwin found the idea that our eyes were shaped by natural selection a bit of a problem.
To suppose that the eye, with all its inimitable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection, seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree.
Darwin couldn't see his way around it, no pun intended. The eye is Paley's watch in the flesh. A tooth is one thing, but an eye? How do you get there? What exactly are the steps? Even the simplest part of an eye is essential for the rest of it to work the way it does. What use to an organism is an optic nerve that serves no purpose? Not that the optic nerve is simple, but you get the idea. Darwin did too, and it haunted him. Now, if he were here now, I would tell him not to worry about it any longer. His theory is safe when it comes to the eye. I would ask him to sit down, relax, and listen, because today we are going to explain how nature can create the eye. To do so, we'll start with a simple organism. A blind organism with no optics of any sort. Now, let's say this simple organism evolved some light-sensitive cells. It could be a pigment that's sensitive to light. Given that, the organism could, in a very primitive way, detect the presence of light and shade. It might not be able to do much else, but it could direct its motion in accordance with the light. That would provide an advantage over organisms that didn't evolve these light-sensitive cells. Hydras have this. They react when exposed to light. It's all because of two proteins, opsins and ions. The opsins change shape in the presence of light, and the ions generate an electrical signal. It's crazy, huh? And that's step one. Now, it wouldn't happen overnight, but you can find light-sensitive pigments in single-celled organisms. It's not a big step to see how a multicellular organism could benefit from this, like, say, a flatworm. The next step is for these photosensitive cells to be collected in a single location. One photosensitive is, well, one thing. A group of them allows for greater detection. The organism still can't see objects, but it can still sense light. It can use that ability to navigate the world. So we're getting there. We have multicelled organisms directing their motions in accordance to the perception of light. Now, let's say future mutations saw these photosensitive cells form into a cup. Again, flatworms have this. The deeper the cup, the better. Now, the organism can detect the direction the light is coming from. Not perfectly, but it essentially has a retina. The retina is located at the back of our eye today. Now the organism's mobility has a bit of purpose to it. What if, like the modern nautilus, a nautilus is a cephalopod like the mollusk, what if, like the nautilus, the top of the cup narrows? The more it narrows, the more the organism can resolve the light's direction. It becomes sort of a pinhole eye. The difference between light and shade become primitive images. I can sense Darwin sitting on the edge of his seat right now. So far, we can see the simple steps of evolution here. From light-sensitive cells on the surface to a collection of cells that form into a cup, adaptations deepen that cup and narrow the opening at the top. Now those light-sensitive cells line the bottom of the cup. So we have our retina and a means to detect light and the direction that it's coming from. It's not hard to imagine adaptations where a thin protective layer of cells form over that pinhole opening. It's another survival advantage. A protected retina is better than an unprotected retina. Now let's take a step back. Given that we now have a retina, a small opening, and a thin membrane protecting it, what do you see developing? It's kind of like an eye, right? That membrane can serve as a lens. It can focus the light toward the back of the recession. You can see where this is going. What if further adaptations allowed the organism to control the size of the pinhole, or to even move the entire eye? It's pretty cool, huh? Complex life exploded during the Cambrian period. If you go back into the archives of the show, there's an episode on that as well. Now, it was during this explosion of complexity that the first eyes made their appearance. Trilobites, like the insects of today, enjoyed compound eyes for getting around. Now, the Cambrian was a time of war when it came to life in the ocean. It was pretty much kill or be killed. Advantageous adaptations were most welcome. Creatures that had eyes, however primitive those eyes may be at first, had a definite advantage over those that didn't. They could escape predators and prey on others. It's a battle that continues to this very day. The eyes have it. Now I wonder what Darwin would say now. I'd like to think he'd nod, settle back into his chair, or perhaps he'd take a long walk around his sandwalk at Downhouse. Either way, I have no doubt that he'd come back home and write about it. Imagine what a great book that would have been. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Evolution Talk. I'm Rick Coast, and you can find show notes and source material used for this episode at evolutiontalk.com. I hope your week is going well, and until next time, please take care of yourself.
Evolution Talk is a Rick Coast production.